Of all UFO sightings or contacts, pilots' reports are often the most reliable because their rigorous training and expertise make it easy for investigators to reconstruct the scene. Also, because the pilot's vision and mental condition are related to his career, most pilots usually hesitate to report if they witness unexplainable phenomena. On November 17, 1986, the crew of Japan Airlines Flight 1628 witnessed some unidentified flying objects that cannot be explained by science so far and reported them. What's even weirder is that the Captain Kenju Terauchi was grounded by Japan Airlines after returning from that flight. What exactly happened that day? Japan Airlines Flight 1628 encounters UFO incident. On November 17, 1986, a Japan Airlines Boeing 747 cargo flight 1628, flying non-stop from Paris to Tokyo, was flying at 11,000 kilometers over Alaska, loaded with fine French wine. That aircraft carried 3 crew members. The captain was Kenju Terauchi, 47 years old, a former fighter pilot and senior aviation pilot with more than 10,000 hours of flight experience. The first officer was Takanori Tamefuji, 39 years old, and the flight engineer Yoshio Tsukuda, 33 years old. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they flew over Anchorage. At that time, the captain contacted the Anchorage Air Traffic Control Center to request the approach route. The air traffic controller advised them to head north, and the plane began to turn. After that turn, all was well when the pilot, Kenju Terauchi, accidentally glanced over the port side of the plane and spotted 2 planes flying in formation about 600 meters below their cargo plane, flying with them in the same direction. At first he didn't care, because Alaska belongs to the North American Air Defense Zone, and fighter formation patrols are also common, but it is obvious that these 2 planes have entered the airspace of their cargo plane. However, 2 other crew members also noticed the anomaly and quickly contacted the Anchorage Air Traffic Control Station on the ground to ask if there were other aircraft in the area. The Anchorage Center responded that no military aircraft were in the vicinity, and that ground radar did not show any aircraft other than Flight 1628. Things didn't end here. After the 2 UFOs disappeared, Captain Kenju Terauchi noticed another giant UFO appeared on the left side of the plane. According to Kenju Terauchi's description, the UFO looked twice as big as an aircraft carrier, and there was a faint white light on its edge, and small UFOs flew out of it from time to time. The object followed the cargo plane for more than a dozen minutes before vanishing near Mount McKinley. Japan Airlines Flight 1628 landed safely at Stevens International Airport in Anchorage at 18:20 a.m. After landing, the 3 crew members were taken away for investigation. At the same time, the U.S. also seized relevant flight data of the cargo plane. The black box and radar data were sent to the FAA headquarters for relevant personnel to read and analyze the data, but they were all required to keep the matter strictly confidential. After the 1628 cargo plane returned to Japan, Japan Airlines asked the 3 crew members not to disclose the matter to the public and to keep it strictly confidential. But the pilot, Kenju Terauchi, gave an interview to Kyoto News Agency about his UFO sighting 2 months later, and Kyoto News made this UFO incident a worldwide sensation. Here's what Captain Kenju Terauchi was under investigation for. Captain Kenju Terauchi's statement during the investigation. Captain Kenju Terauchi said, 2 cosmic rectangular vehicles appeared directly in front of the plane. Their interiors glowing brightly, illuminating the cockpit of the plane, and I felt the heat of the saucer's thrusters bake my face. After 3 to 7 seconds, the fire from the jet engine stopped and became a small circle of light, and they began to fly horizontally at the same speed as we did then. Occasionally, the center of the saucer emits a light, like a charcoal fire. The shape of the flying saucer is a square, the central part is dark, and the left and right 2/3 of the surface is covered with numerous nozzles. Kenju Terauchi even sketched the schematics by hand. When the light gets stronger, I can see sparks flying like burning charcoal. It's about the size of a DC-8 aircraft. The DC-8 mentioned here is a 4-engine jumbo jet airliner developed by the American Douglas Aircraft Company that can carry even more cargo than a Boeing 707. The entire crew has been watching the shiny UFO for about 6 minutes. The 2 UFOs flew as if guiding a Japan Airlines 747, moving 40 degrees forward and left. Captain Kenju Terauchi continued. It is impossible for any man-made aircraft to suddenly appear in front of our big jet at 910 km per hour and then distance itself from our aircraft and fly in parallel formation. We didn't feel in danger. To be honest, we were just stunned. I don't know why they were so close to us. Captain Kenju Terauchi, panicked, immediately made several calls to Anchorage Air Traffic Control to ask again if there were any other planes in the area. Anchorage Air Traffic Control replied that they had seen nothing on radar. So Captain Kenju Terauchi set the range of the aircraft's digital weather radar to 20 miles, the radar angle to horizontal, and saw a large, round green object about 13 to 14 kilometers ahead on the radar screen. At this time, Japan Airlines 1628 was flying over Ilsan Air Force Base in Fairbanks. It was a clear night, and we were just above the bright city where everything could be seen clearly. Then a third, larger, disc-shaped dark silhouette, dozens of times larger than a Boeing 747, began to approach us from behind and above. This larger craft, described as a mothership by Captain Kenju Terauchi, is twice the size of an aircraft carrier and dozens of times the diameter of a Japan Airlines 747. The first two UFOs were most likely launched from this giant ship. This mothership is walnut-shaped, and looks like two large aircraft carriers back-to-back, looming in the parallel direction of Japan Airlines 1628, flying back and forth. It is far more maneuverable than any known aircraft and appears to defy gravity. It has yellow, amber and green lights and a rotating beacon light. Captain Kenju Terauchi continued. The thing was flying as if there was no gravity. It accelerated, then it stopped, then it was going at our speed and leveling with us. So to us it seems to be stationary, and then in the blink of an eye it changed direction. In the command center on the ground, someone proposed scrambling to take off the F-15 fighter jets. But Captain Kenju Terauchi might have witnessed the huge space carrier and felt the huge difference between human beings and alien civilizations. He rejected the proposal. Instead, Captain Kenju Terauchi asked air traffic controllers for permission to turn the plane around and descend to 31,000 feet. The flight crew watched for more than an hour and a half. They watched the UFO mothership from the Yukon Mountains 550 kilometers south across Alaska until they prepared to land at Anchorage Airport. The UFO mothership turned twice during the flight and followed the Japan Airlines 747 for 32 minutes before suddenly disappearing. When the United Airlines and Japan Airlines planes passed each other about 270 kilometers north of Anchorage, United Airlines reported to the control center that no objects were seen near the Japan Airlines plane. So even if 3 people on Japan Airlines saw the giant UFO carrier at the same time, it would still be suspected in future investigations. The investigation of this UFO incident. John Callahan, chief of the FAA's Accident and Investigation Branch, led that investigation, and the FAA and U.S. military ground radar confirmed the sighting of at least one UFO. These objects are moving at speeds of thousands of miles per hour. Callahan convened a meeting with representatives of the FBI, CIA, and President Reagan's scientific research team, and it was decided to dispose of the incident data, and all present were told to act as if the meeting had never taken place. Since then, various hypotheses have emerged about that event. For example, misidentifying Venus or Mars, both of which were unusually bright at the time. Or maybe they're reflections from clouds. Or the result of an optical illusion caused by ice crystals, or something like that. However, the crew members, all experienced pilots, also mentioned that the heat from the UFO permeated the air in the cabin, and Captain Kenju Terauchi apparently saw the alien mothership. This case was reported in major newspapers in Japan and the United States at that time. Unfortunately, Captain Kenju Terauchi was unceremoniously grounded for accepting media interviews and publicizing this incident. The reality of UFOs. Some people believe that this event was concealed because the 2 unidentified flying objects were the top-secret stealth spy plane SR-71 of the United States at that time. SR-71 is a high-altitude and high-speed spy plane. It has a science fiction appearance, and few people had seen it at that time. And the whole fuselage is cylindrical, and the tail nozzle on either side can shoot out white and yellow flames. These characteristics are very similar to the first 2 UFOs. Another theory is that weather scientists say the event is likely to be a glare caused by ice crystals. Because the temperature in the high altitude is too low, water cannot exist in a liquid state, so in the high altitude, the water will form a large number of ice crystal clouds. Under the refraction of moonlight, there may be dazzling light, and when people encounter things they have never seen, their brains will make up extraordinary imagination, and optical illusions may affect the judgment of pilots. Overall, the Japan Airlines Flight 1628 incident remains a mystery, but Captain Kenju Terauchi's observations and descriptions are still considered crucial for investigating unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial life. What do you think of this incident? Feel free to leave your comments.